It just shows you what can happen here if you don't have the right laws. Because people like that fuckhead, Justin, they pretend
you guys
that
are on first name basis.
Yeah, that cocksucker.
Rogan talks about government corruption here in Canada and how Justin Trudeau is an absolute bonehead for basically censoring just Canadian news, the internet, and a couple other things. You also have some Conservative MPs have returned to Parliament for a press conference to just talk about how Mark Carney, carbon tax Carney, is not good for Canada. He has so many ethics violations, and we have to get to the bottom of that. And we're going to start things off with Melanie Joly. That's Canada's massive LARPer, live action role player, who always wears these like World War II or old school fatigues, and she just pretends that she's living in a movie. It's super bizarre. I don't like her, if that wasn't clear enough. So let's just jump right into it. But before we do, I do want to encourage you all to the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. So let's take a look here at Melanie Joly. She says that Canadians are interested in being involved in Ukraine's security after war. No. I don't speak for Canadians. I don't think she speaks for Canadians, but I'm going to speak on behalf of all of us and say that we don't want that. We don't want to inherit their problems. That's not really our fight. That's right next to Russia, and we have other things to worry about. But correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe there's some of you down in the comments are like, no, absolutely, Mr. Sunshine. We for sure have to inherit all of Ukraine's problems and defend them even after there's peace. I don't agree with it at all, but she's on her last little vacation right now. She's over, I think, in Brussels. She gives this press conference and she is asked questions by reporters on what's going on between Russia, Ukraine, and Canada's involvement and a couple other things. So let's take a look.
Strategy is going to be released this week, but they say it doesn't have significant spending because of prorogation. And I'm wondering if you could confirm whether the strategy is being released this week and how the funding will compare with the Indo-Pacific strategy, which had $2.3 billion.
First and foremost, when we will be launching the African strategy, you will be the first one to know. And so that would be the first part of my answer. Second,
brother, they gave Canada, our government has given $4 billion with a B to Africa in the past 4 or 5 years. I haven't been to Africa, but I don't think I've noticed any substantial increase in quality of life in Africa. And why the hell are we sending so much money to Africa? Like, are they sending us money? Why are we sending 4 billion smackaroos to freaking Africa? That's mental.
Part of my answer would be when it comes to Africa, we've been investing more than $4 billion in Africa over the last 5 years. Canada is present and will continue to be present. And
no, I don't consent to that. That's insane. Who's saying, yes, let's spend more in Africa? For what? What's our return on investment? Are we getting freaking cacao beans or something? Does that come from Africa? What the hell are we getting from Africa, man? $4 billion, that could solve homelessness here in Canada. Like, what the heck? What's wrong with these people? They're mentally deranged. That's so much money. Canada is this peacekeeping country, but we've also been this doormat for every other country that shows up. All these solicitors come knocking. Maybe they do, maybe they don't come knocking, but we're just giving money away to every country that apparently asks for it or doesn't ask for it. I don't understand it. I don't like it.
And contrary to certain countries, we believe that international aid is important and we'll continue to invest in it.
And Minister, I'd like to ask about the negotiations with the European Union for a defense and security agreement. I understand that the negotiations are still underway, but I'm wondering about the focus of the agreement and the status of the talks. The EU deal with Norway was mostly about undersea cables. The one with Japan was about naval drills. So what's the focus of a possible EU security deal with Canada, and what are the timelines for those negotiations?
So, of course, I've had the chance to talk a lot about increasing our defense and security cooperation with European partners. We do that through NATO, and that's really important. And that's why the focus when it comes to defense and security talks with the European Union per se, it is true the fact of defense procurement and also being able to share more intelligence and information. I believe that we can do that rapidly, and I think that we're in a good pace. We're going at a good pace, and we're in a good place.
Minister,
Can
you talk about why Canada's international allies have not been speaking up to oppose the U.S. 51st state talk? If you asked them to speak up publicly, or if you had, or if you got an explanation from any of them about why they're radio silent?
I must say that based on my conversations with many European colleagues, many of them are not necessarily completely aware of what is going on, first in the US and second in Canada.
That's a lie.
Every country in the world is looking at its own reality. And
No, every country in the world's looking at America right now because Trump is, I mean, he's doing his thing and there's no stopping Trump. Absolutely. In the same breath of air, he's called for taking over Mexico, renaming the Panama Canal to the American Canal. He's already renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America, and it's on Google Maps, Apple Maps, whatever maps program you use here in North America and likely around the world by now. No. Of course, they're aware that Trump has been talking about annexing Canada and becoming the 51st state. That's so disingenuous to try and play it off as, well, chances are they haven't heard of it. Are you kidding me, dude? It's in the same breath of air as Gulf of America and Panama Canal. So first of all, that's mis and disinformation. You're absolutely lying right there. And second of all, why would they comment on it? They don't want to be a target. Why would you call it's like a bully picking from a crowd. Like, hey, you squirmy guy over there, come here. Right? It's a jock picking little freaking nerds in the crowd. And we're the little nerdy country that's been picked on as a 51st state. Not that Trump is being a bully, but it's like, I don't know. It is what it is. But no, like, why would they comment? You got Luxembourg standing up. We think that Canada should not be the 51st state. Then all of a sudden, Trump's going to be like, oh, Luxembourg, you guys need some freedom over there. Like, why would anyone say anything? No, everyone's keeping to themselves because they don't want to be picked on. I don't blame them.
Europe has its own challenges, but I think that we have had very productive meetings over the past week. It was necessary for me to be in Europe to tell them exactly what's going on, to make sure that we would coordinate on any form of response to tariffs, and that we would be together defending our national security and sovereignty. And in that context, I think that it was a wake-up call for Europeans to hear what we're going through. And also, I think that the Munich Security Conference over the weekend was also a pivotal moment for Europeans based on the conversation that the American administration is having directly with Russia.
In terms of your meetings with both Marco Rubio and the British government, I'm curious, since Keir Starmer's going to the U.S. this week, did you convey to your British counterpart any desire to have King Charles speak up on this matter? And did you get any assurances from Marco Rubio that this is a talking point or a negotiating lever that the Trump administration is using?
I just want to understand your last question. What are the end of your question? What are you asking exactly? That Marco Rubio.
In the first, you had meetings with Britain and the American representatives there. I'm wondering, given Keir Starmer is going to Washington, did you ask for any intervention by King Charles? And as you spoke to Marco Rubio, did you get any assurance
hell's the
from
king gonna
him
do?
that the 51st state talk is a leverage or negotiating tactic?
Okay, I
or
understand.
Right.
Listen, when it comes to Marco Rubio, we never had any conversations about the 51st state. And what I said to the American delegation when some senators were making jokes about it, I said, it's not funny. And this is a question of respect of our country, respect of our leaders, and respect of our people. And I always answer the same thing, which is we will be the best neighbor, the best allies, but we will never be a state and we'll never be a colony. And, you just have to look at a hockey game against any American hockey club right now and see how much Canadians have rallied up around the flag and how much there is a sense of patriotism and of very strong national identity across the country.
Is she drunk? Honest to God, is she drunk? She's going, hey, you Canadians are never going to be the 51st state because look how patriotic they are at the hockey games. What the hell you mean patriotic? Booing the American anthem and the American flag is not a sign of Canada being patriotic. You don't build yourself up by tearing other countries down. We've prided ourselves on being good neighbors. We've prided ourselves and built this super long lasting, tradition that the world knows us for, that we're this super polite, country and people, right? You go to any other part of the world that isn't on this side of the world. You go to Europe, you go to any part. And people say, you don't seem American. You're polite. You say sorry, right? That's like a thing that happens, right? Sorry if that offends any Americans out there, but I've traveled Europe. I've traveled a good part of the world. And without even wearing Canadian stuff, without even wearing a Canadian flag, people can say, oh, well, you don't seem American. So that we've built a really good reputation. All of a sudden now it's all coming crashing down because they're saying it's a sign of patriotism. This was an opportunity for her to say, you know what? Canadians have a lot of tension with the 51st state rhetoric that's going on. And we don't condone the booing that's happening, but we need to fix those relationships. Socially, these people are encouraging. She just said that it's a sign of patriotism if you're booing the American flag. Because she didn't say it wasn't. She said, look how patriotic people are at Canadian versus American hockey games. This is ridiculous. This is adding so much fuel to the fire. No, horrible politician.
Canadians are proud people, courageous people, and they don't accept any form of rhetoric that is against our own identity as a country. When it comes to talking to the British monarchy, this has not been part of the conversation, but when it comes to talking to the British government, yes. And indeed, we're in close contact with the British government, with Keir Starmer. I'm having also a meeting with the British foreign minister when we're both in Johannesburg, and we are definitely working with them on the question of tariffs.
You can tell that she's full of crap and she has no idea what she's talking about. Encouraging Canadians to boo the American anthem and saying that that's a sign of patriotism, that's garbage. That is absolute garbage. You can be extremely patriotic in Canada. You can be proud of our flag and proud of our anthem and proud of our country and proud of our people. And you can be against being the 51st state. That's fine. That's actually quite patriotic. But booing the American anthem because of this political tit for tat kind of, rhetoric that's been going on, that's not a sign of being patriotic. That's a sign of, antagonizing Americans to retaliate. I don't think Americans have booed the Canadian anthem. That's kind of surprising. I'll be very honest. That's quite surprising that hasn't happened, at least not yet. But speaking of Americans, one person who always is looking out for Canada for his own interests, I'm assuming, because he does a lot of hunting and fishing and stuff like that in Canada, but doesn't since Justin Trudeau's been prime minister, at least for the past several years, is Joe Rogan. So let's take a look now at what he had to say on a recent podcast where he calls Trudeau a bonehead, but uses slightly different words.
Every government wants to eventually completely and totally control its population because it's way easier for them to make money. And that's what they like to do.
Yeah.
They like to make money. They like to be in bed with the lobbyists and the military industrial complex and the pharmaceutical industrial complex, and they like to fucking impose their will on people. And if you can't express yourself and say, hey, this is fucked up, this is crazy, why am I doing this? Like, these studies show that you're not correct. Like, if you can't say all those things, which right now you can't do in Canada, it's not the same. Like, their ability to express themselves on the internet has been severely limited. It's real weird, man. It's real weird, and it's happening right. You could walk there. If you wanted to, you could walk there. And it's fucked. It's like it's on the same patch of land as us, and it's fucked. It just shows you what can happen here if you don't have the right laws. Because people like that fuckhead, Justin, they pretend.
You guys
that
are on first name basis.
Yeah, that cocksucker. They pretend that they're, and I don't talk this way about anybody.
No, I'm really surprised.
I genuinely despise people like that. And I think it's good to say it publicly because people need to understand like what these people are doing. These people are leading you on the road to legitimate communism. Like he's leading that country on a road to legitimate communism. It's very dangerous. And I think most Canadians are fed up with it at this point. It's just like the party up there has so much control. And he's been forced to resign, so he's got to step down. And just hopefully they don't get some new slick talker to con them into the same old bullshit. Hopefully someone comes along that has like real meaningful change.
I mean, that would be another slick talker who would be, you know, really bad for this country would be Mark Carney. That's a perfect example of somebody that we don't want in power. And unfortunately, it seems like he's going to be the interim prime minister, given that it seems like he has a massive lead in this liberal leadership race. And once he's selected, he'll be the interim prime minister. And who knows when we'll actually see the next federal election to have a real elected prime minister. But nonetheless, I would personally like to see, and let me know down in the comments if you would also like to see Pierre Poilievre do a 2-hour, 3-hour, whatever long form podcast with Joe Rogan. That would be absolutely incredible. I don't know who would have to initiate it. I doubt Joe Rogan would reach out to Pierre Poilievre and the team to have him on. I don't think he really cares that much about Canadian politics, but if Pierre and his team did the groundwork and tried to reach out to Joe Rogan and his team to try and get on, that would be phenomenal. I mean, there's so much reasons to believe that social media helped Donald Trump win the presidential election, right? Especially going on the Joe Rogan podcast and how Kamala didn't. Now, would he grant a Canadian politician who's running for prime minister to go on his show? I don't know, but it's one of those things where he talks a lot about Justin Trudeau. He talks a lot about Canada and things like that. And we are neighboring countries. And I think, you know, there's a better chance of Pierre going on than there is of like the Italian prime minister or like the German prime minister or Macron or runner up in France or something like that, because we are quite literally neighbors and tied at the hip, whether we like it or not. So let me go down in the comments if you guys would like to see that. Nothing I can do to make it happen, but it'd just be cool to see who else out there would like to see that happen. And then you have Conservative MP who went and did a press conference here in Parliament to basically take aim at Carney and his past business dealings. Let's take a look.
For Canadians, with carbon tax Carney having been a senior advisor appointed by Justin Trudeau to advise him, but done in such a way to shield him from all of the standard and customary accountability. Justin Trudeau gave Mark Carney all of the power and none of the accountability that comes with it. You look at some of the positions that we know carbon tax Carney held at the same time, some of the decisions the Trudeau Liberals took. For example, the Trudeau Liberals changed mortgage rules in such a way to that would benefit the bottom lines, pad the pockets of mortgage companies, private mortgage insurers, like the one owned by the company Mr. Carney represents at the same time he was sitting in the Prime Minister's office. While Mr. Carney was chairman of the board at Stripe, Stripe was shielded from the government while they were gouging Canadians. This is the same problem we have with Brookfield trying to enter into a pension scheme with the Canadian government worth $10 billion to Canadians while Mark Carney was sitting in the Prime Minister's office. The customary and normal accountability practices have been completely disregarded by Mark Carney. Now, he has claimed that he will make disclosures should he be successful in an election. But what that means is he could get through the Liberal leadership and through a general election, and it would be an additional 4 months before those disclosures were completed. All the while being able to potentially make decisions that would further enrich himself and call into question the normal practices that prime ministers and party leaders are expected to follow. And while he says that he will make these disclosures later, we know that he can't be trusted. Take, for example, this past weekend, where Carbon Tax Carney says in French, while in Quebec, that an east-west pipeline would never be completed. But a week ago, speaking in English, while in British Columbia, he said that he would use emergency powers to push through significant projects of a national interest, like.
I mean, that's absolutely disingenuous for him to do that. And I did catch that as well. And to be frank, I should be making a video dedicated to just the lies and the corruption that Mark Carney is doing. Let me know down in the comments if that's something you'd be interested in. But that is absolutely true. He's been caught now several times saying polar opposite things on opposite sides of the country. That's called pandering. It's extremely disingenuous. And thankfully, with the rise of social media and our ability to share information instantly, we can debunk a lot of the things that he's saying. I don't trust Mark Carney. He's a dangerous, dangerous fella, and he will say or do whatever he needs to in order to try to win. I think that he's going to win the Liberal leadership race by quite a bit, a landslide even. He has a lot more money. He has a lot more MPs, Liberal MPs that are supporting him or endorsed him than Karina Gould, who's a literal Liberal MP, and so is Chrystia Freeland. So that's kind of sketchy on its own. But the fact that he's been caught lying and saying literal polar opposites on opposite ends of the country, that's like a huge red flag. How can we trust anything you say if that's the case? You say one thing to one group of people that they want to hear it, and then Quebec, you go and say what they want to hear, which is no pipeline is going to go through Quebec. Oh, Quebec is protected and blah, 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 blah. Screw Quebec and their freaking red tape, man. Screw Quebec and the red tape. There has to be a pipeline that goes from West Coast to East Coast, and it has to go through Quebec, and they're going to have to deal with it. But I don't like Mark Carney for those reasons, among many, many, many others. In fact, there isn't a single reason that I would like Mark Carney. So everything he says and does, I just pretty much don't like. That's it in the video, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about any of the topics that were covered, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye for now.